So for this third round of the Bloodstorm practice day that we did, I was playing myself actually. So I'm gonna bring cultists to the Bloodstorm event. And cultists are a bit of a different army than what most people are used to. So it's a supplementary army book, just like Makar and the Asklanders. And it's a Demon Legion supplementary army. I don't have any Demon Legion models myself. However, the Cultists army book is quite funny in the way that you don't really need any, or you don't need a big collection of demons in order to be able to play the book, because the book heavily focuses on other races trying to summon demons. So obviously you need the models in order to be able to summon some demons. However, otherwise you just need your rank and file generic models basically. So for my purposes, I'm using my Dread Elf models, and then yeah, I have like Temple Militants and Selection Spear Elves. I don't know what the name is nowadays, but just the Spearmen to serve as basic cultists. And then the Possessed are going to be Blackguard, Obsidian Guard models. The Clawed Fiends are going to be the models that I also use for my Gorgons. I have an actual Ritual Altar. And the Titan Slayer Chariot is just going to be a Raptor Chariot. Now my opponent this game was the Vermin player. So we already saw another Vermin player before. This time it's the full army of 3,000 points. And it's just a staggering amount of models that you can put on the table at 3,000 points with Vermin Swarm. I mean, I thought I had quite a lot of models with like 140, 150 models. Basically, 4 of his units already outnumber my army, and then he still has nearly twice as much left. Yeah, I think this matchup is not really good for me in terms of just doing damage in general, because usually the Vermin Swarm downside is that in combat you're a bit less sturdy because of defensive too. My troops have a bit of a disadvantage of only having offensive too, so my cultists are not going to benefit from any of the supposed downsides of the Vermin Swarm. So in that aspect, it's going to be a bit of a difficult game. However, my list does focus heavily on trying to take down the enemy giant. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. So let's see what's going to happen when we actually get it on the table. My opponent dropped for first turn. Yeah, he's basically going to form an entire battle line of different units. And even at this low point game, the Vermin Swarm really completely floods the table with units, to be honest. It's also a bit of a funny effect that if you build these 3 small 1,000 point games, most of these still focus on having some units on the table, because, well, obviously you have to have at least 3 units in your army, I believe. So you can't really get away with fielding really expensive stuff, and that also results in every army having at least 9 units in total. And some armies will even have a couple more units. So for example, this Vermin Swarm, if I count quickly, it has about 11 or 12 units. And then you still have the giant. So that floods up the field quite quickly. My opponent has his giant on the left side. He uses the what's it called? Vermin Lord, Vermin guy, with the big pointy blade, and the direction of the blade is the facing for the model for this game. So on the left side he has, I believe, the Great Weapon, Plague Disciples, then he has the Momilla Brutes, and then from then on it's basically just Vermin Legionnaires, except for the big block next to the Impossible Terrain, that is the Black Fur Legionnaires. So in this format also the unit size is capped to, well, the starting size plus half of the additional models that you could maximally add. However, for the Vermin Swarm, this still means that you can field a unit of 48 models, I believe. Or 38. I thought it was 48. Anyway, it's just a really big unit, basically. And I don't really know if this format is really good with respect to Vermin Swarm armies. I mean, I don't think there's any unit in the game that can beat that kind of unit, especially if there's also even a guy with the Secrets of the Doomblade and a Potion of Swiftness in there, and it just all fits in this format. That is quite insane. Anyway, yeah, so we also played around with Vermin Swarm a little bit during the day, and the opinion of the Vermin Swarm players actually was that the book didn't really work at these low point values because you run into discipline issues. Well, I was playing with cultists, so I didn't really see any of the issues that the Vermin Swarm players had, because first of all, you have to make sure that you cause either a panic test or a break test on the opposing player. And obviously, my cultists, they have quite a decent magic loadout because, well, I have 3 magic users, wizard adepts, or I have 2 wizard adepts, 1 wizard apprentice in my hero selection. Then I have three champions, I believe, or 2 champions that are wizard adepts that also channel, and the ritual altar also channels. In the end, I have about channel 6 or 5 in the list at 3,000 points. That is quite decent, and then also still I can do sacrificial offerings with my cultist units. So for every time I do this in a unit, I can do it once per unit per turn. I get a +1 to cast. So basically I have magic users that are wizard masters on every spell, and I have thaumaturgy, which allows me to reroll the ones that I throw. So couple that with quite some offensive magic, they can really pack a punch offensively in terms of magic, and at these low point games, magic really pushes through quite hard. So I'm not saying that my list isn't potent or anything, but combat wise, it definitely misses something here and there. So as you can see, my opponent just pushed up, well, basically his big block of Black Fur veterans and also all of his supporting pieces. On the right side, he gave me a charge with my scouts on an 11. So I took the chance and I just charged at him. I believe it was an 11, could also have been a 10, but I just took the chance. I didn't really know what I was going to do with the unit otherwise, because I could do some shots, but maybe I would have caused a panic test, but it wasn't going to be anything too big. So I did that charge and I actually made it. I was quite happy about that. This is going to be my one chance basically to break through this unit at the right side. Because if I don't, then, well, these Felites, I believe they have paired weapons even. So my unit that has charged is going to have 12 attacks. His unit's going to have more attacks actually, if I don't do enough damage. And then he's gonna strike me on a 3+, wound me on a 4+, whilst I'm gonna hit him on a 4+ and wound him on a 3+. So basically the odds are quite even there, and then he has life is cheap and I don't. So that is gonna be an interesting toss-up. Otherwise, I do some magic. I don't even believe that I do too much. In this third round of the matchups, you also get the racial attributes of your armies on your giants. So in this case, my giant actually gets an Aegis 5-up, which is amazing, and he gets Supernal. He also gets Battle Focus at some point, because I have to take a Discipline test every single turn. And then if I fail, I get Frenzy for the rest of the game. So that is quite a downside, and I should have played into that, which I definitely didn't do in this play yet. Yeah, what is otherwise happening? Well, on the left side, all the way on the left from the ruins are my possessed, so they are moving up to a very aggressive position because I believe that they can basically take on anything that my opponent can throw at them. They are backed up by a unit of cultists. Then in the ruins we have the Titan Slayer chariot ready to attack my opponent's giant if he decides to come out. And then otherwise I just have units of cultists spread out. On the right side we do have the combat with the infiltrators against the vermin Velites. And these guys, they actually pack above their, or they punch above their capabilities, and they managed to run down the Vermin Swarm unit. The stuff up there is not immune to panic. The Vermin V-Lights are no longer insignificant if they ever were before. And yeah, they actually broke from combat, causing a unit of Vermin Legionnaires to also flee. And also another unit of V-Lights, they just flee the board. I believe the unit with the Eagle standard there was outside of 18 inches of the, or 12 inches actually only, of the general. So that is going to be quite a severe limitation to the Vermin Swarm in this case. So your main combat blocks, they might be just doing quite well and also quite independent. However, if your support gets taken down and causes a panic check on some other parts, then it might become quite a different story for the Vermin Swarm player. Anyway, we continue with the Vermin Swarm player turn. So he moves up his Black Fur veterans, and he also reorganizes on the left side a bit to prepare basically for the possessed coming in. Yeah, my possessed, I don't really want to throw them away and just lose them. So ideally, I think on the left side here on the board, I would charge them still into the Plague Disciples, because the Plague Disciples are so incredibly dangerous at this point level. But then again, nearly everything in the Vermin Swarm army at this matchup is incredibly dangerous to me. So even the Vermin Legionnaires. So I did overrun with the Infiltrators into, I believe it was a Mage Bunker or something, or some kind of bunker at least. I did overrun into that, and then I was greeted by 25 attacks that would hit me on 4+, wound me on 4+. Whilst after that, with any models that I would still have left, which were none, I could hit him on a 4+ and wound him on a 3+. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that Vermin Swarm doesn't strike that hard, maybe, but if your Mage Bunker already has 25 attacks as its agility 6 or 7, I mean, that to me is a bit odd, maybe. But then again, they also pay some points for that. As I mentioned earlier, my giant does have to take a frenzy test every single turn, and I definitely forgot about that. So this turn my giant really enthusiastically charged into my opponent's Doomblade, which was going to be a happy event. So basically, my opponent doesn't have any ranged way of taking out a giant, and I could have saved my giant the entire game if I had made sure that I wouldn't be able to charge him in any way. Because then he would just have to come get my giant somewhere in my lines. And this is in the event, in the end, per game, I believe you can score like 4 points or so. Having your giant survive is another point, and killing the enemy giant is another 2 points. So yeah, keeping your giant alive is just incredibly important for the tournament. So I definitely should better have just kept him somewhere safe and not have him engage the lines in any way. What you also saw happening, or at least what did happen, and maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't, was that I summoned the Gorgons. So the summoning in cultists works quite in quite a cool way. What you can do is with either the Ritual Altar or a cult leader with the Master of Ritual upgrade, which is general only. So in this particular setup, it's not that useful. But either one of these two, or with a cultist unit that has the Abyssal Conduit upgrade, you can, after movement, summon a unit of cultists by spending Veil tokens. That's at the start of the magic phase. So for every Veil token, you can summon up to 200 points of demons. And if you have a Ritual Altar, you can summon up to 300 points per Veil token. And the Gorgon unit, or the Clawed Fiends unit that I have, is 398 points. So I spent 2 Veil tokens to summon it within 12 inches in a legal position in any setup that I want, any unit confirmation. These are the Cloud Fiends that I already bought into my list beforehand, so you cannot really just infinitely summon units or tailor your summoned units to your opponent. You already have to buy them in your list, so in that case it makes it quite fair. Funny thing is that any demons that are quite vulnerable to ranged, they benefit quite a lot from this. Because basically you can just protect them from ranged until you really want to pop them out. Also, you cannot summon any greater demons, and you could summon scouts if you wanted to, but it's not really useful because, well, you can't scout with them. Otherwise, are there any restrictions? Well, you can't have any heroes either, so no heralds. I think that's about it. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so it's quite cool. On the turn that they are summoned, they're also counted as having moved. So Thrashing Engine you could also, or no, Hope Harvester you could also summon. But then you're gonna have at least a 4+ to hit. If you roll a 6 on that to hit, roll a 5+. It can be quite fun to just summon a Hope Harvester somewhere. But whether it's really the best choice is another question. So in this list I put Cloud Fiends and I really wanted to try them. I also thought that they fit best with the models that I had for them, which is the Seekers of Slanesh from Games Workshop. But then I reconsidered in the meta of the event basically. So there's going to be a lot of low point games or low point games, also low point lists, a lot of core. So there's probably also going to be a lot of infantry if you take into account that there's going to be a lot of focus on scoring. So cavalry will be quite rare, I think. So AP is not as important as just being able to dish out damage and grind. So I thought that maybe I should actually go for Hoarders instead of the Cloud Fiends. So in the end, in my final list, it's going to be Hoarders rather than Cloud Fiends. Yeah, but it is quite fun to be able to just pop a scoring unit also behind the enemy lines somewhere. Yeah, otherwise what is happening on the board? So yeah, I did summon these Cloud Fiends and then I didn't really realize that I had still a giant engaged to my opponent's Doomblade unit. So they could easily reform, they could reform to face my Cloud Fiends and then basically mop up the unit. On the other side, on the left side, my Possessed, they took care of a unit of Vermin, one of the many units. But then there's still more Vermin to come. Basically, the Possessed are my only dedicated combat unit besides the Cloud Fiends, and the Cloud Fiends I basically tossed away this matchup. So it's not really looking that good for me at this point because basically I just have cultists that are wound markers and my opponent still has combat capable units, including his giant also. So I try to threaten a little bit with the Titan Slayer Chariot. Otherwise I basically have to play an evade game. So I can threaten up a little bit and I'm trying to force either a panic check or to kill the giant. So killing the giant would be really good because, well, obviously for the scenario points. Otherwise, if I kill the giant, I also inflict a panic check on the main Vermin Swarm unit. That would also be good, but I don't really. I don't know. It's a Vermin Swarm discipline is quite reliable in the end. If you're within general discipline and within an Eagle standard. So yeah, I don't think it's that much of a problem for the Vermin Swarm. But then again, it's really a bubble army at lower point levels. So if you have some dedicated combat units, I can imagine that you might be able to get a flank somewhere. And if you get a flank somewhere with a rank, the Vermin Swarm are not steadfast anymore, so they don't fight an extra rank. Also, anyway, they can't really make support attacks to the side, so they don't really have that many attacks. However, you are going to be... well, if you're not steadfast, that's going to be an issue. So you have to have something in the flank of the Vermin Swarm, and then you might break them quite easily. They do still get the rank bonus though, and they do still get a banner, and they also do still have life is cheap, so it might still be quite difficult to win combat from them. But well, I must say I don't have that much experience playing against Vermin Swarm yet. We will see how it goes on the table. But I think at 4.5k, it seems like discipline is going to be less of an issue than at lower point games because, well, your armies can be more well-rounded, especially compared to this format where you still randomize who your general is. So that's a bit of a downside for Vermin Swarm, but also definitely for my cultists because there's one upgrade in the army that basically just elevates your cult leader to the arch cult leader, making it the guy to lead your army with an extra discipline, with also an 18-inch discipline bubble, all kinds of stuff that I don't get right now. So in the previous round, I did misplace my Titan Slayer chariot, and then that allowed my opponent's Plague Disciples, I believe they are, to run into the ritual, the Titan Slayer chariot, and then to overrun into my main cultist block with my general. So that's not really good. Probably that's gonna die. So in the end, I only have my ritual altar left and 2 units of cultists. I believe the objective this scenario was to, there's 3 markers as you can see on the table, and you have to be with the center of your unit within 6 inches, and then it has to be scoring units, and then most scoring units get some tokens, and then the most tokens at the end wins the game. So it is anyway really good to have some scoring units. It's especially good to have scoring units that can stay on the objective for a long time. So with my cultists, I'm unstable with the models, with the units. So that is quite a big benefit for objective play in this scenario. The only downside is that in this setup I played with rather small units of like 15 guys. I was expecting to see just max units of, I don't know, like 25 guys or so, and then you see these Vermin Swarm with like 40 guys in the unit. But I was expecting like a combat output of, I don't know, 5 combat res max, so that I would have some losses. I would crumble down a bit, and then I would still stay on the objective, at least for 1 turn. And that would be quite good, obviously. But then again, I think maybe it's better to have some units that are a bit bigger for the objectives. So probably in my final list, I'm gonna have a couple of units that are a bit bigger. Yeah, basically at this point in the game, my opponent is just finishing off my army. So sometimes in the game you have this situation where you just, well, you didn't win, and there's still a couple of turns left, and your opponent can just happily grind away at everything that you still have on the board. Yeah, this is one of these scenarios. So my opponent is going to go through the general, the mage bunker basically, and then his Plague Disciples are going to be freed up, and then yeah, my next turn I still have my Ritual Altar that can cast. I still have 1 more mage just standing beside the giant. Actually, that's my what's his name? The Demon Symbiote. So I can still try to whittle down his giant. Ideally, my list is really good at taking down the giant with all the magic. This matchup, I also cast Hand of Heaven and the Breath of Corruption a couple of times on this big block. I think that was a bit of a mistake because I was hoping to get 2 of them off in 1 round and be able to make a panic check, and then hopefully my opponent would fail the panic check, and in my head it was all really pretty and really amazing. In the end, he never had to take a panic check, and even then, if he had to take a panic check, I don't think it would have mattered. I think it would have been way better to just try and kill the giant, focus on that. because against this big block of Black Fur veterans, I can't do anything anyway. So yeah, that's basically gonna be the way the game. Yeah, so my opponent still finishes off a couple of my models. I believe at the end of the game I don't have anything left, but I might still. I still have a Ritual Altar and my Demon Symbiote. I think gameplay-wise, Cultist is really refreshing to play. Just at a tournament once, it's definitely an army that everyone should try out at least once because it's really refreshing. And it's quite fun how different it is compared to other armies, but it still feels at least kind of balanced. It's definitely not an army that is really easy to defeat. Anyway, if you play smart with it, so I think it's something to try out for a lot of people. I hope you liked this video, and I'll see you the next time.